I wasn't supposed to hear it. If she had hung up when she thought she did, or if I'd pressed that red button half a second sooner, none of this would have happened. But she didn't, and I didn't. And what I heard through that phone changed everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and the difference between the two. I'm in love with him, Margot. I've been in love with him for so long I don't remember what it felt like before. That was Lila, my best friend of 4 years. The person I called after every bad date, every long day, every moment when the world felt too heavy to carry alone. And she had just confessed she was in love with me, to someone else, while I sat frozen in my car, phone still pressed to my ear, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Have you ever discovered a truth you weren't supposed to know? Have you ever had that moment where the ground shifts beneath you, and suddenly everything you thought was solid turns out to be built on sand? What would you do if your best friend confessed they loved you but didn't know you were listening? Would you speak up? Would you pretend you never heard it? Would you drive to their apartment in the middle of the night and risk everything you've built together? Because that's exactly where I was, standing at the edge of a cliff with 4 years of friendship behind me and absolutely no idea what was waiting on the other side. What I did next didn't just change our friendship. It changed everything I thought I knew about timing, truth, and the lies we tell ourselves to feel safe. If you've ever been caught between friendship and something more, you need to hear this story. Hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. Andy Love Stories, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about taking risks, perfect timing, and the courage it takes to admit what your heart has been screaming at you for years. My name is Bennett Cole, and this is the story of how I fell in love with my best friend by accident. Or maybe I'd been falling all along and just refused to call it what it was. Let me take you back to where it started. 4 years ago, a pretentious art gallery in downtown Portland on a Thursday night. I had no business attending. I'd been dragged there by a colleague who bailed 30 minutes in, leaving me stranded among abstract paintings and people who used words like liminal and deconstructed without irony. I was halfway to the exit, already planning my escape route, when I heard someone behind me mutter under their breath, "If I see one more deconstructed sunset, I'm deconstructing my will to live." I turned around. She was standing in front of a massive purple canvas that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto it and called it art. She held a plastic cup of cheap wine in one hand and wore an expression of such profound boredom that I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. She looked at me, raised one eyebrow. "You think this is funny? I think you just said what everyone here is thinking. Then everyone here has taste." She extended her hand. "Lila, Bennett, you look like you'd rather be anywhere else, Bennett. You're not wrong. Good. Let's leave." And just like that, we walked out, left behind the purple canvases and the people pretending to understand them, and ended up at a 24-hour diner 6 blocks away. We talked until 3 in the morning about her job as a book editor, about my work as an urban planner, about the inexplicable appeal of terrible reality television, and why breakfast food tastes better at midnight, and the weight of wanting things we weren't sure we deserved. When I finally drove home that night, the sun was starting to come up, and I remember thinking that I'd just met someone important. I didn't know how important. Not yet. After that, we became inevitable. It started with coffee the next week. Then coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into dinners that stretched into late-night walks through the city. Before I knew it, Lila was woven into the fabric of my daily life so seamlessly I couldn't remember what things looked like before her. We developed rituals. Tuesday morning coffee at the place near her apartment that spelled her name wrong every single time. Weekend trips to used bookstores where she'd read me terrible passages from romance novels just to make me laugh. Late-night phone calls when one of us couldn't sleep and needed to hear another human voice cutting through the silence. She knew things about me nobody else knew. That I was terrified of becoming my father, who'd spent 40 years in a job he hated because it was safe. That I still felt guilty about my younger sister's accident, even though it happened 20 years ago and wasn't my fault. That I measured my coffee with obsessive precision every morning because control over small things made me feel less powerless over big ones. And I knew her, knew that she edited with a red pen because blue felt too gentle. That she'd watched the same movie every birthday since she was 12 because it reminded her of her grandmother. That she hated surprises but loved spontaneity. And yes, there was a difference, and no, she couldn't fully explain it. People asked if we were together. all the time. Friends, strangers, the barista who made our coffee, and the woman who worked at the bookstore, and Lila's coworkers, and mine. We always said, no. Well, I always said no. Lila would just smile in this unreadable way and change the subject. Looking back, that should have told me something. So should the way she got quiet whenever I mentioned dating someone, or the way every relationship I tried felt temporary in a way Lila never did. But some people become such a permanent part of your life that you stop asking what they mean to you, because asking feels dangerous. Asking means you might have to change things, and change means risk. So I didn't ask. I just kept Lila exactly where she was, safe, comfortable, labeled best friend. It was easier that way. For 2 years, I dated, casually, half-heartedly, women I met through apps or mutual friends or work events. They were smart, attractive, interesting. On paper, they should have worked. In practice, none of them lasted more than a few months. There was Rachel, who talked about her ex-boyfriend so much I started feeling like I was dating both of them. There was Jennifer, who had her entire life planned out in 5-year increments and got anxious when I couldn't commit to weekend plans 2 months in advance. There was Keisha, who was perfect, except for the fact that being with her felt like performing a role I hadn't auditioned for. And after every single one, I called Lila. She always answered, usually within 2 rings, and she always asked the same question. How bad was it? That became our joke, our pattern. I'd suffer through an awkward dinner or a forgettable date, and then I'd call Lila and turn the whole disaster into a story worth telling. She'd laugh in all the right places and ask follow-up questions and somehow make the entire evening feel less like failure and more like material. I never questioned why I did this, why she was always my first call, why hearing her voice at the end of a disappointing night felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for hours. It was just what we did. Looking back now, I see it clearly. I was using those dates as proof. Proof that I was trying. Proof that I was open to meeting someone. Proof that I wasn't stuck or scared or deliberately avoiding something right in front of me. But the proof was a lie, because I was coming home to Lila every single time. That brings me to 3 months ago, the night everything changed. I had a date with a woman named Simone. She was a friend of a colleague, an environmental lawyer with dark eyes and the kind of confidence that should have made me nervous in a good way. We met at an upscale Italian place downtown, the kind with cloth napkins and candles on every table and prices that weren't listed on the menu. Simone was beautiful, articulate. She laughed at my jokes and asked thoughtful questions, and by every measurable standard, the date was going well, except I was somewhere else. I kept checking my phone under the table like a teenager, waiting for Lila to text me. She'd sent me a message earlier that afternoon, something about a manuscript that was driving her slowly insane, and I'd been waiting for the follow-up that hadn't come yet. Simone noticed. She set down her wine glass and looked at me with this expression that was kind and sad at the same time. You're somewhere else. I'm sorry. Long day. It's fine. I get it. She paused. For what it's worth, whoever she is, she's lucky. I opened my mouth to correct her, to say there was no she, but the words didn't come, because somewhere deep down, in a place I wasn't ready to examine, I knew Simone was right. The rest of the dinner was polite, pleasant, entirely forgettable. When we said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, we both knew we wouldn't see each other again. I got in my car and sat there for a minute, staring at my phone. Then I did what I always did. I called Lila. She answered on the first ring. Let me guess. Disaster. Is it that obvious? You only call me this early when something's gone wrong, or you've seen a dog. I laughed despite myself. No dogs. Just a very polite conversation where someone suggested I might benefit from therapy. Oh, Bennett. Her voice was warm, teasing, so familiar it made my chest ache in a way I didn't have words for. What did you do? I was distracted. By what? I hesitated. Work stuff. Liar. She always knew. I started driving while we talked. She told me about her day, about the manuscript she was editing that had a promising premise but kept losing its way in the second act, about her coworker Marcus who'd accidentally sent a spicy text to their boss instead of his girlfriend, about the restaurant I just left, and whether the dessert menu was worth the emotional labor. It was easy. It was always easy with Lila. 20 minutes passed like 20 seconds. I was almost home when her tone shifted, became more careful. So, you think you'll see her again? Simone, probably not. Why not? I don't know. It just didn't feel right. Silence, the kind that wasn't quite comfortable. You say that about everyone. Her voice was quiet now, almost sad. Maybe I'm picky. Maybe. Another pause. Or maybe you're looking for something that doesn't exist. That landed heavier than it should have. I pulled into my driveway and killed the engine, suddenly too tired to keep pretending this conversation wasn't about something else. Lila, I should go. She said it quickly. Too quickly. Early meeting tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. Good night, Bennett. Good night. I pulled the phone away from my ear. My thumb hovered over the red button, and something stopped me. Maybe it was the strange tightness in her voice. Maybe it was the way she'd hung up too fast, like she was running from something. Maybe it was just instinct. I didn't press the button, and that's when I heard it. At first, it was just ambient sound, movement, the sound of her setting the phone down on a counter, a cabinet opening, water running. I should have hung up then. I know that, but I didn't. Then, I heard another voice, female, distant and crackling through what sounded like a speakerphone. Still on with him. That was Margot, Lila's oldest friend, the one who'd never particularly liked me, though I'd never understood why. No. Lila's voice sounded different now, tired in a way she never sounded with me. Just got off. And how was the date that wasn't yours? Lila let out a breath that might have been a laugh, or might have been something closer to defeat. Same as always. Lila, I know, Margot. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you keep doing this to yourself. Doing what? Playing the supporting character in his life while he auditions people for a role you've been performing for free. My hand tightened around the phone. My heart was suddenly loud in my ears. That's not fair. Lila said it quietly. Isn't it? He calls you after every failed date like you're his emotional pit crew, and you just show up every time. He's my best friend. He's the guy you're in love with. The silence that followed felt like falling, and he has no idea. Margot's voice softened, but didn't lose its edge. Or worse, he does, and he's pretending he doesn't, because it's easier. I stopped breathing. When Lila spoke again, her voice cracked. Just barely, just enough. I'm in love with him. God, Margot. I've been in love with him for so long I don't remember what it felt like before, and I can't tell him, because if I do, and he doesn't feel the same, I lose him, and I can't lose him. Her voice broke on the last word, and something in my chest broke with it. I said her name before I realized I was going to. Lila. The line went silent. Not the comfortable silence we'd built a friendship on. This was the silence of a secret, ripping itself open, raw and irreversible. Then I heard her move. Fast. Panicked. Bennett. Her voice was small. Devastated. You didn't hang up? No. Oh my God. Lila. To go. Don't. I can't do this right now. Please don't hang up. But she did. The line went dead, and I sat there in my car in my driveway, staring at my phone like it might give me answers it didn't have. She was in love with me. Lila was in love with me. The words played on repeat in my head, but they didn't feel shocking. They felt clarifying, like someone had just handed me the answer to a question I'd been avoiding for years. I thought about every date I'd been on in the past 2 years, every forced smile, every polite laugh, every moment I'd sat across from someone and felt like I was performing a role I didn't want. And I thought about how I always called Lila after, how she always answered, how relieved I felt the moment I heard her voice. I thought about the way she looked at me sometimes when she didn't think I was paying attention, the way she remembered things I didn't remember telling her, the way she always showed up, always, without me ever having to ask. And I realized, with a clarity that felt like breaking and healing at the same time, that I'd been living my life in the wrong direction. I'd been searching for something I already had. Before I tell you what I did next, I need to ask you something. Would you have spoken up in that moment, or would you have pretended you never heard it? Would you have given her space, or would you have driven straight to her apartment and laid your heart bare? Drop your answer in the comments right now. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Andy Love Stories, because this story is about to take a turn that will break your heart before it heals it. I didn't let myself think. If I thought about it, I'd talk myself out of it. I'd convince myself to wait, to give her space, to let things settle before I did something we couldn't undo. But I'd already spent 4 years waiting. 4 years, talking myself out of feelings I was too afraid to name. So I grabbed my keys, walked back to my car, and drove. Lila's apartment was 12 minutes away. I made it in 8. I took the stairs 2 at a time because the elevator felt too slow. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I reached her door and stood there for a second, trying to catch my breath, trying to find the right words. There weren't any. There were no right words, only honest ones. So I knocked. She opened the door almost immediately, like she'd been standing on the other side waiting. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Bennett, I'm sorry." She blinked. "For what?" "For making you wait this long." Her breath caught. "I heard what you said." I took a step closer. "And I need you to know it wasn't a shock. It was relief." "What?" "Because I've been trying to figure out for 2 years why nothing ever felt right. Why every person I met felt like a placeholder. Why I kept coming back to you like you were home." I swallowed hard. "And now I know." Lila stared at me. Tears were pooling in her eyes again. "Bennett, don't say this because you feel guilty. I'm not. Don't say it because you think it's what I want to hear. I'm not." I took her hands. They were shaking. Or maybe mine were. "I'm saying it because I'm in love with you. And I think I have been for a long time. I was just too scared to admit it." She let out a shaky breath that was half laugh, half sob. "You're serious. Completely. You love me. So much it's embarrassing how long it took me to say it." And then she kissed me. It was sudden and soft and certain, like she'd been holding it in for years and finally had permission to let it out. I pulled her closer, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist, and kissed her back like I was making up for lost time. When we pulled apart, she was crying and smiling at the same time. "This is real." She whispered it like she was afraid the answer might change. "As real as it gets." She laughed, pressed her forehead to mine. "I can't believe you eavesdropped your way into a relationship. Technically, you forgot to hang up." "Semantics." I grinned. "Best mistake you ever made." "Yeah." She kissed me again, softer this time. It really was. We stayed like that for a while, standing in her doorway, holding each other like we were afraid to let go. And maybe we were. Maybe after 4 years of pretending, we both needed proof that this was actually happening. Eventually, she pulled me inside. We sat on her couch, the same one where we'd watched 100 movies and argued about plot holes and fallen asleep during marathons we swore we'd finish. But now, everything felt different. The same space, the same people, a completely different story. She curled into my side. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, everything felt right. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because losing you as a friend felt worse than never having you the other way." I kissed the top of her head. "You're not losing me. You never could. I know that now." We talked for hours that night, about all the moments we'd missed, all the times we'd almost said something but didn't, all the ways we'd been orbiting around the truth without ever landing on it. She told me about the first time she realized she loved me. It was 8 months after we met. We'd gone to a concert together, some indie band neither of us had heard of, and it started pouring rain on the walk back to the car. I'd given her my jacket without thinking about it, and she said that moment, that tiny, insignificant gesture, cracked something open in her chest. I told her about the time I'd seen her on a date with someone else. About a year in, I'd been walking past a restaurant and saw her through the window, laughing at something the guy across from her said, and I remembered feeling this irrational surge of jealousy that I couldn't explain. I'd gone home that night and convinced myself I was just being protective. But I wasn't. I was jealous, because some part of me already knew she wasn't supposed to be with anyone else. "Why did we waste so much time?" she asked. "I don't think it was wasted. I meant it. I think we needed it. To build what we have now. To make sure this was real." "You think so?" "I know so." I looked at her. If I'd figured this out 2 years ago, I don't think I would have been ready. I was still trying to run from things I didn't understand. But now I'm sure." She smiled, kissed me again, "And I'm really glad you didn't hang up." 3 months later, I still call Lila every night. The only difference is that now she answers with, "Hey you," instead of "Did you get home?" And I don't have to pretend the best part of my day is just a habit. It's not a habit. It's love. It was probably always love. I just didn't have the courage to call it what it was. We still do all the same things we used to. Coffee on Tuesday mornings, bookstore trips on weekends, late night conversations about everything and nothing. But now, there's no pretending, no hiding behind the safety of labels that were always too small for what we actually were. People don't ask if we're together anymore. They can see it. It's in the way she leans into me without thinking, the way I reach for her hand like it's muscle memory, the way we look at each other like we're both still a little amazed. This is real. Her friend Margot told me last week that she'd been waiting 4 years for me to wake up. I told her I appreciated her patience. She said it wasn't patience. It was faith. Faith that eventually I'd stop being an idiot. She wasn't wrong. So let me tell you what I learned from all of this. Because this story isn't just about me and Lila. It's about every person who's ever hidden their heart to keep the peace. It's about the relationships we settle for instead of fighting for the one we actually want. First lesson, timing isn't always in your control. Sometimes the universe forces your hand. Sometimes the right moment is just the moment you stop being afraid. I spent 4 years waiting for the perfect time to tell Lila how I felt, but the perfect time didn't exist. The only time that mattered was the moment I chose honesty over comfort. If you're waiting for a sign, this is it. Stop waiting. The right time is now. Second lesson, safe isn't the same as right. I kept Lila in the friend category because it felt less risky. If I never said anything, I'd never lose her. But I wasn't actually keeping her. I was keeping a version of her, a limited version that fit inside the boundaries I was too scared to cross. Real love requires the courage to risk loss, because without risk, there's no reward. Third lesson, listen to the patterns. For 2 years, I kept coming back to Lila after every failed relationship. Every single time, she was my answer, my comfort, my home. But I ignored what that meant, because acknowledging it would have required me to change. Pay attention to where you find peace. Pay attention to who makes you feel whole. Your heart often knows before your head catches up. Fourth lesson, vulnerability is strength. Lila's accidental confession was her most vulnerable moment. She hadn't meant for me to hear it. She was terrified, exposed, but that vulnerability became the catalyst for everything that followed. Hiding your truth might protect you from pain, but it also protects you from joy. The bravest thing you can do is let yourself be fully seen, even when it's terrifying, especially when it's terrifying. Because here's the thing about love, real love, the kind that lasts, it isn't always loud. It isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, consistent, showing up again and again, until one day you realize this person isn't just in your life. They are your life. And if you're lucky enough to find that, don't waste time being afraid of it. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever had a friend you loved but were too afraid to tell? Have you ever overheard something that changed everything? What would you have done if you were me that night? Would you have driven to her apartment? Or would fear have kept you frozen? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story, because this story isn't just mine. It's for everyone who's ever loved someone from a distance. Everyone who's ever settled because taking a risk felt too dangerous. Everyone who's ever wondered if they missed their chance. You haven't. It's not too late. But you have to be willing to take the leap. If this story moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button so more people can find this message. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's standing on the edge of their own cliff, trying to decide whether to jump. And subscribe to Mr. Andy Love Stories, because every week I bring you tales that don't just entertain, they transform. Stories about real people facing real choices and finding the courage to choose love over fear. Remember this, the best love stories aren't the ones that come easy. They're the ones that require us to be brave, to be honest, to stop hiding behind what's comfortable and start reaching for what's real. Lila and I didn't fall in love overnight. We built it, slowly, carefully, over 4 years of friendship that was always something more, even when we pretended it wasn't. And when the truth finally came out, It didn't destroy what we had. It completed it. So take the risk. Make the call. Tell the truth. Because the greatest love of your life might be right beside you, waiting for you to finally see what's been there all along. This is Mr. Andy Love Stories, reminding you that sometimes the best relationships start as friendships. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that friendship was never enough. Until next time, stop waiting for perfect timing, stop hiding behind safe choices, and start living the love story you deserve, the one that's been waiting for you to be brave enough to claim it.